So we knew the NBA's Western Conference was going to be insane this season. I mean, when there is such a disproportionate number of good players and good teams on one side of the country that people want to rip up the way the league selects everything from its all-stars to its playoff spots, you know we're talking about something dangerous and deep. Still, even just a couple weeks into the season, it's clear that the actual landscape out west is a little different terrain than what we expected. Take the team that's ruled over the past 5 years. Yeah, we know that the Warriors would no longer be a juggernaut, but there were long debates coming into this season about whether they'd still be a playoff threat. 2 weeks in, and that discussion has shifted into whether they are a threat for the best lottery odds. Or Sacramento. Last year, the Kings finished in the 9th spot. Their young talent seemed ripe for a breakthrough into the playoffs this season. Instead, they've started 0-5, and it's actually been even worse than that record would suggest. They've been outscored by a league-worst 17 points per game. And then we have the Nuggets, last season's number 2 seed, a team that was bringing back all its major pieces, but instead of continuing to improve, what we've seen so far is, well, I'm just going to allow Coach Mike Malone to describe where Denver is right now. Here was his quote last night. "I'm embarrassed. We're a great talk team. We can talk before the season starts about all the things we want to accomplish, and we want to be a championship contending team, but it's all bull. Don't tell me about it, show me. And right now, we've got a lot of guys that aren't showing me much and just care. I know you're going to make a mistake. Just show me that you care." That's a lot, and that was after the Nuggets lost to New Orleans last night with, let's just say it, a questionable defensive effort. Denver allowed 37 points in transition to a Pelicans team that had come in averaging just 15 points in that category, and a few of the breakdowns were downright egregious. Others seemed to be ripping at team chemistry. Watch this in the fourth quarter. Jamal Murray trying to feed Nikola Jokic, but turns the ball over instead. Jahlil Okafor sprinting off for the uncontested layup, and then look at Jokic. Hands up, he's clearly frustrated. When a stoppage came just a few seconds later, Jokic then jogged over to the bench, where Malone promptly replaced 4 of his starters. It's been a weird season to start for Jokic, the player who last year looked so special he beat out every other big man in the league for All-NBA first-team center. He came into training camp with his weight up from last year. His shots per game are down. His passing has not been nearly as dazzling. In fact, all the Nuggets' passing is way down from last year, as is their pace, which ranks last in the league. And look, it's early here. Denver is only 5 games in. But while teams like the Warriors or the Kings aren't flourishing in the West quite as expected, other teams are. The Clippers have shown flashes of absolute dominance even without Paul George. Anthony Davis is getting into a scary rhythm with the Lakers. Houston's offense, basically a race car now with Russell Westbrook joining James Harden. Teams like the Mavericks and even the Suns have been plucky, gosh darn it. It's still a conference with very few nights off, where if you take the first 10 games or so to find your footing, you could very well end up in quicksand. So, Paul, let's talk more about the Nuggets, because we still think really good things can happen for them this year. What is the missing ingredient?
I think the leadership. It's like, who's the leader on this ball club? Because when I see things like that from Jokic, you know, that's not being a leader. I mean, the leader doesn't always have to be your best player either. But when I look around at their roster, who's the voice of this team? Who's getting on the guys? Who's out there playing hard, inspiring them? So I think they have all the pieces, but I don't know who's leading them night in, night out. You know, who's that voice?
I think the big key here, guys, is you can only surprise people once in the league.
Exactly. They're not sneaking up on nobody anymore.
Exactly. Everybody now is sitting there going, oh, the Nuggets are good. We got to prepare for them.
Yes.
Last year it was kind of like, it's the Nuggets, really?
Right.
And they rolled through the league, and everybody went, oh, it's coming. The issue to me is, you know what Jokic can bring. And to Paul's point, he's got to set a better tone from a leadership perspective. But they need another star. And Jamal Murray was supposed to take another step.
Yeah, he's supposed to be that all-star. We had conversations last year, is he going to make the all-star game? He almost did, but he's been inconsistent.
And does anybody really believe that he can take that next step now? Because there is not another answer on that roster as far as superstar potential, or a guy who can take that next step in this moment where you think, okay, he can back up Jokic and he can provide a lift when they need it, especially offensively.
I'm not ready to give up on Jamal Murray after 5 games.
No,
I'm not giving up, but what leads you to believe from what you've seen to date, after all the hype, that he's going to be able to live up to where everybody wanted them to be? I think that's where the focus is to me. Jokic setting a better emotional term inside the room, but somebody has to help him on the floor. And Murray has the talent. He's just got to show it now.
Right. I mean, look, his shooting has been inconsistent, especially from beyond the arc this season so far. We saw a little bit of that last year, right? During the first playoff series, he didn't have quite the shooting that he wanted to. We saw some great moments from him in their second-round playoff series, especially under pressure with those foul shots and everything. I do want to see that more from him. Brian Windhorst recently wrote a piece about how they still have needs at small forward. Do they have the depth to at least kind of get them back to where, like, on track for where they want to be right now?
They got the depth, but like I said earlier, you know, they're not sneaking up on anybody. The one thing you got to look at is the kid, Michael Porter Jr. I mean, I believe you have to have a superstar wing. I think he has star potential eventually, but, you know, he's still young, hasn't played many games.
Played one game. He played last night, first time.
And he looked solid,
Yep.
you know, and I think, you know, the improvement from them has to come from within. And they can be one of the better teams if they just, you know, like what we said, show the leadership. Jamal Murray steps up. And if this guy, if he develops, then watch out.
Yeah, and the Jokic puzzle is something, it just, he doesn't look like himself so far this year.
Not yet. And Rach, you're right. There's plenty of time. But this is what happens when expectations change. And this is the difference now compared to where they were last season. Nobody was talking about the Nuggets. It was an afterthought. Now all the focus is this the team that we thought they were? We're only a couple weeks in, but they have to look in the mirror and at each other and say, hey, we need to do better. And that starts always for every team on the defensive end. Unless you see that improvement, I wouldn't expect to buy into anything they're doing in the moment.
And that is something when you point out what we expected. At the beginning of last season, we didn't think they were going to be a great defensive team because they hadn't been, right? And then they came and they stepped up their defense. And it was really a lot of the same guys. And they just said, we just decided we wanted to be better in this. And they were. And it really was the backbone of a lot of their play last season. And as you heard Mike Malone I don't say take shots, but those were kind of shots.
He was taking some shots.
At his own team.
Yeah, he was taking some shots.
Has not been there so far.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For highlights and analysis, check out the ESPN app. And for live streaming and premium content, check out ESPN+.